Hello everyone, this is Chromý and together we will continue the course Interdisciplinary Approaches to Language and its Use too. In this presentation we will continue our discussion of variationist sociolinguistics and we will focus on social variables which are locally relevant. As we already said, during the development of variationist sociolinguistics, it became evident that relating the general social variables such as social class, age, education, or ethnicity with linguistic variables is somehow limited. Even if these relations were found, it was rather complicated to explain them from the theoretical perspective. Therefore, various researchers started to look for the social differences which are relevant for the given community they are examining. From the theoretical point of view, such variables may offer us a better explanation. For example, we may examine a relatively closed community in which we can find various smaller local groups which differ in their interests, activities, and also in the way how they use language. A very useful concept from this perspective is the community of practice. Generally speaking, it is a group of people who share a common interest and frequently gather around a certain activity. Even in a small town, we may identify many different communities of practice. For example, these may be parents organizing a children's group, or local football fans, or local fishing club. There are numerous possibilities how a community of practice looks like, and it is crucial that the structure of such a community is always locally grounded. Importantly, such communities cannot be distinguished simply by using the general social variables such as social class, education, or age, which were typically used in the first wave of variationist sociolinguistics. In the group of football fans, there may be people from different social classes with different education and of different age and gender. The concept of community of practice was defined in the early 1990s by Jean Love and Etienne Wenger. Wenger subsequently corroborated it in his book Communities of Practice: Learning, Meaning and Identity. Wenger defines a community of practice based on three conditions, namely mutual engagement, joint enterprise, and shared repertoire. In other words, members of a community of practice interact with each other on a regular basis. Importantly, this interaction is not necessarily harmonic, but it may be also full of conflict. The joint enterprise condition is related to the shared activity in which the members of the community participate. This is important because the community of practice presupposes intensive engagement in the shared activities. The third condition is relatively broad and means that the community shares common resources of various types. These resources may be certain words, communication routines, gestures, symbols, and so on. But it can also be non-linguistic resources such as various shared stories, concepts, and so on. An example of the use of the community of practice concept is the Penelope Eckert's research analyzing language variation in one Detroit high school. In the plot, we can see the percentage of use of negative concord in English in 5 groups of women students. Negative concord, or double negation, is a construction in which more than one negation is used, such as I don't never have no problems, instead of I don't ever have any problems. It is a quite common construction in English, but it is also rather stigmatized. The 5 groups on the x-axis are different communities of practice. Wild girls were students who often committed significant offenses, often went to school under the influence of alcohol or light drugs, and also had problems with the police. The second community were the burnouts, who considered the school as bothersome, did not have any high ambitions, and were oriented towards the non-school local environment. The third group, partying jocks, were students with a high orientation towards school success, who spent part of their time in various social events. Fourth community were jocks who were focused on the school and were only partially socially active, and the last group were the intellectuals who were focused solely on the school and rather avoided any social activities. From the plot, we can see that these groups differ widely in their use of the negative concord. The intellectuals and jocks almost did not use this construction, whereas the burnouts and wild girls do so in around 50% of cases. This is a nice example how the local categories may help us to identify the patterns of variation in a certain environment. Of course, the question always is, what are the locally relevant variables in the given society, which must be identified prior of doing such research? Before we will conclude this presentation, I have one reading tip for you, and this is a review paper by Miriam Meyerhoff and Anna Strycharz, which discusses the community of practice concept from the perspective of variationist sociolinguistics. If you enjoy the presentations, we would be glad if you would like them on YouTube. That is all from me now. See you next time.